can guarantee they can give you 100% because you have to have the medical evidence. And, in my opinion, if someone is guaranteeing something like that, then they're looking to fabricate evidence.
Welcome to the Fiscal Foxhole, the podcast proving you don't need a degree in finance, just some grit, a game plan, and maybe a sense of humor. Your hosts are retired Army veteran Rob Moore and retired Marine veteran Omen. Together, they'll help you dodge financial landmines, call in the air support on your savings, and laugh at the ridiculous money mistakes we've all made. If you can survive mandatory fund days, you can survive personal finance. Welcome to the Foxhole.
Welcome back to the Fiscal Foxhole. I'm your host today, Rob Moore. Happy to be with you all, sharing all this wonderful military financial knowledge. Joining me, as always, is my favorite knucklehead, Omen.
Good to be here. I love it. And I would like to say, I think we need to change things up. I wouldn't really consider you the host or me the host of the show. I think it's really who's on fire watch.
Yeah. I slept in today, so I'm the host.
You got the watch.
Hey, sorry about that dig. Sorry about that dig there, calling you a knucklehead. I got a little sick to my stomach at all the love we gave each other the last episode. Like, hey, it was great being your retirement. Like, oh yeah, you were CFP, and we're just high-fiving and fist bumping the whole time. So I'm like, man, this feels too grimy. We got to get back to the real world here.
Yes, agreed. Let's move on.
Speaking of punishment, you've got a chore ahead of you in a couple days, right? You're hitting the marathon in a few days.
Marine Corps Marathon. Doing
Ready
the 50th on 250. So yeah, looking forward to that. 3 days away. Weather is looking fantastic. So it's supposed to be in the low to mid 40s at start, and won't get above 62. So
that's wonderful. Is it looking dry too?
Quite honestly, if I could order up my perfect weather, I would take a little bit of overcast with maybe some misting rain in there somewhere as well, just to keep it cool. But I'll take those temps.
That's so funny. I remember. I'm not a runner, you know this, but I remember the fastest time I ever had. There's a lake here in Northern Virginia, Burke Lake, which I love. It's like 4 3/4 miles. I used to run it all the time. The fastest time I ever made around was when it was about 45 degrees in misting. It was absolutely freezing, miserable going out. By the end, I felt fantastic.
Yeah, you're good a mile in. Once you're a mile in, everything's smooth sailing after that.
Yeah, I will say I'm always good a mile in, except for the one time my wife gave me those little gummies, those energy gummies. I think had like a little too much caffeine, and I had a whole nother set of issues running around Burke Lake. But
that's why I always carry tissues with me.
There you go. All right, we are off the rails already, but that's okay. I think we got a long episode ahead of us, and I think that's completely justified. Because today we have another guest coming to the Foxhole. We have Heather Walrath, who is a veterans representative from Navy Mutual, coming in to talk about different types of veterans benefits. We're really excited to have her on. I personally talked to her a bunch of times. You know her. She's a friend of both of ours. I'm looking at her bio here. I'll read it down real quick, but my goodness, I knew she was a pro, but looking at her bio, I'll try to hit the big parts here. Heather is an expert all things VA benefits and disability. She's Navy Mutual's financial educator, military benefits liaison. She works with military members and the families for the last 16 years. She's a 2009 FINRA Military Spouse Fellow and an accredited financial counselor through the AFCPE, and also an MQFP, Military Qualified Financial Planner. Oh, in addition to being an accredited veterans representative. She's worked as a PFC in the military with military people, including Guard and Reserve, in addition to being a subject matter expert on military survivor benefits. She's been featured in magazines such as Military Spouse, Military Family, Guard and Reserve Magazine, a featured speaker at the MOAA, Blue Star Families, Mill Money Con, and the ARC of Northern Virginia, AFCPE, and Student Veterans of America. It goes on and on, right?
That's crazy.
And I think you'll see, and I left some stuff off. I think you'll see her expertise speaks for itself. But that is, in a moment, we're going to call her down to the Foxhole. I'm curious if she's ever been in one.
Yeah, I know she's from an Air Force family. So we gave Eric a hard time about this before. So yeah, probably not.
Well, we will show her our best courtesies that we can allow. But before that, we have other business to get to, and that is today's headline. Today's headline comes to us courtesy of Yahoo News and Inez Ferre. I don't know how to say it. INESFERRE, total pro here. The title of the article is Gold, Silver Tumble in Biggest Daily Drop in Years as Stunning Precious Metals Rally Comes to a Halt. Now, Omen, I know you and I are, neither of us are day traders, right? We both are big index, passive investing, buy and hold type of investing. But I thought this was a pretty interesting article to bring up because it's related to investing and it allows us to talk about a few key components that we take advantage of.
Yeah, agreed. I actually wrote about this 3 weeks ago as gold was on the rise and becoming ever more so popular. And I thought it was a great example of what can happen when a particular investment can gain such popularity so quickly, and really how that could potentially trigger a little bit of FOMO and run your investment plan right off the rails. So yeah, this is a great article, very timely article.
Let's dive into the numbers in a little bit because it is interesting the way gold behaves and precious metals behave in a portfolio. But talking about the recent run up, gold is up 60% year to date, and that's including the recent drop we just had. So it's quite a return. We'll talk about the volatility later, but a lot of finger pointing as far as why that has happened. A lot of things come into play: inflation, geopolitical uncertainty, weaker dollar, and they're pushing investors towards safe havens like gold. Central banks and institutions are increasing gold allocations. Speculative analysts are kind of fueling the flames when it comes to, like you said, FOMO, get on this train while it goes up. Gold commercials.
Yeah.
If you watch the news in certain types of programming, you're going to be hit with those gold commercials. And when gold is on the rise, 60% year to date, there's a lot of strength behind those messages, because when you go and you see they've got the facts to back it up, it's going to be easy for them to sell you an investment in gold.
Yeah. I mean, we've got major banks right now still projecting that gold is going to continue to rise for years to come. Bank of America, Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan, they're all talking about gold as it continues to be on the rise for 26, 27, even through 2029, going from where it is, as of us recording this podcast right now, somewhere around $4,300 per ounce to over $6,000 per ounce. And so, yeah, absolutely. As you watch these commercials and as you hear these banks put out their headlines that they're projecting just a continued increase in gold, it can be very tempting to want to add more and more and more of that to your portfolio.
Because even listening to what you just said, which is all true, if I'm a listener, I'm not sure about where my money should be. All of a sudden, I'm going to start thinking about well, do I have enough gold in mind? Should I be buying more gold? When in reality, you and I agree on this. No, we need to build a portfolio based on your goals and your dreams, et cetera, and hold, because all this is doing is behaving exactly how we expected it to behave.
That's right. That's right.
This is why I don't know how many portfolios you put gold in. I do. I include a little bit in most all of them for different reasons, which I'm about to talk about. But the bottom line is, when it's going up or going down, that's not the right time to think about whether or not gold should be in your portfolio, because you're thinking about the wrong thing. It's doing exactly what you expected it to do, right? The nice thing about gold and precious metals is it has a low correlation to the U.S. equity stock market. We talk about this for a second. Low correlation means it does not behave the same way the U.S. equities behave, right? If you compare it to anything else, it might have a higher correlation or lower correlation. But the general investment vehicle that most people use for investing is U.S. equities when we're in the U.S. market. So let's talk about the S&P 500. It has a low correlation to the S&P 500, which is really nice. Talk about why in a second. Low correlation means it doesn't move at the same time. Now, it's got a correlation somewhere between negative 0.2 and positive 0.2. So let's call it zero. A correlation of zero means it's unrelated. If S&P 500 goes up, gold might go up or might be going down. S&P 500 is going down. Gold might be going up, might be going down. It's completely unrelated, right? So that's why when we add gold into a portfolio, sometimes it's going to be augmenting the returns we're getting from normal investing. And sometimes it's going to be moving in the opposite direction, which can help kind of flatten out the overall volatility of your portfolio.
Yeah. And I love that you have drawn out the purpose behind why we would put gold or any other precious metal for that matter into somebody's portfolio. And you're doing it with a level head, not based on the emotion of the latest headline and clickbait that you hear in the news.
Yeah, exactly. Turn off the noise. Like I said, it's doing exactly what we thought. When we put gold in a long time ago, we expected it to be volatile. Yeah, it dropped. This is the biggest drop we've seen since, what was it, 2013?
Yeah.
Right? I'm not panicking. Like,
nope.
Okay, yep. That's what we expected. Gold is a volatile instrument. The allure of gold, despite the fact of how it might look in your jewelry, as an investment, is that low correlation, right? And also it has an ability to protect against inflation over time. So those are the allures. The day-to-day volatility, include this recent drop, is not one of the allures of gold, but it's part of it. It's written into the plan. So just expect these things when you buy a investment vehicle such as gold or any other. It's going to be volatile up to a certain point, and it's going to have an expected return. So back up, get the bigger picture, keep things in perspective.
Yeah.
All right. So we could talk about this a long time, but like I said, with someone like Heather coming into the foxhole, we got to carve out some time. So without further ado, let's get Heather down to the foxhole. And welcome to the foxhole, Heather Walrath.
Hey, thank you so much for having me.
Heather, I know you have a lot of experience with the military and helping out military vets and service members, but Omen and I had a discussion this week before you came on. We were wondering, have you ever been in a foxhole?
I absolutely have not. So chalk one up to new experiences. So I hope I behave appropriately, head down, don't take up too much elbow room, but I will do my best. I appreciate you sharing your space with me.
Yeah, this is definitely more comfortable in our foxhole down here than out in the real world.
Excellent. I waited just long enough, right, to bring in those creature comforts.
Well, we talked earlier about, Heather, all your accomplishments. You sent us this bio, and Omen and I were talking about earlier all the wonderful things you've done for the military. And as far as what the military needs and the service members need from someone of your expertise, you hold a lot of credentials. You're an accredited financial counselor, as well as a military qualified financial planner. Those are kind of the two big, I guess, alphabet type things. I see, looking at all your credentials. But you're also a veterans representative. Can you tell us about being a veterans representative? Is it different from being a VSO? Would there be any difference that may dictate who a veteran might want to get in contact with?
Great question, right? Lots of alphabet soup out there. So my journey to become an accredited veterans rep actually came from going through the process with my husband. So he worked with a great veterans rep here at Navy Mutual. But I realized at that point that there were just not enough people helping to navigate veterans through this process, right? So luckily, I worked for Navy Mutual, who happens to be the oldest federally recognized veteran service organization in the country. So in order to be an accredited veterans rep, you have to be essentially sponsored, by a company that's a VSO, with the recognized by the VA, because they do have a recognition process, to actually be a VSO. And then you essentially sponsored, go through the training and whatnot. So when you're working with someone, we've had discussions before, about the claim sharks, right? There's a lot of people out there who offer to help you for a fee, get you to a certain rating, and we can talk about that later, hopefully. But not everyone is accredited. And to be accredited, you have to have that standing within the VA. So to find someone who is truly accredited, meaning, they've taken the required classes, they have that sponsorship by a VSO, you can look for that and search that through the VA. So I think that's really important, because by law, it is illegal for anyone to charge you for your initial VA claim. So when you're first doing that first one, please use that accredited person who can provide their expertise but not charge you for it. And there's just a lot of confusion about that. So that's kind of the relation between a veteran service organization might have VSOs on staff, the accredited people that are actually working the claims.
Heather, you brought up shortages on veterans representatives and VSOs. Do you still see that as a problem? And for me, when I think about shortages, I think that this is actually why claims sharks, a reason, not the reason, but a reason why claim sharks actually have gained in popularity is because availability. Do you still see that as a problem?
Well, I would say yes and no, because what people don't understand is you do not have to work with a veterans rep to do your claim. Whether I submit a claim for someone or they submit it themselves, it goes exactly into the same queue. So sometimes people get really tripped up on, I have to find someone to do my claim. I can't find anyone to help me. They're all full, so they don't do their claim. And they can absolutely do it themselves. The advantage to the VSO, to a good one, just like in the financial counseling world, we have all variations of people that are personalities, how effective. But the advantage is we've kind of been through this before. We can kind of calm everybody down a little bit, explain the process, explain what you need to substantiate your claim. And I do have a little bit more insight as to what's happening behind the claims. So I can log into the VA systems and kind of see who's looked at it from the VA, if they've had any comments, if they're waiting on anything. The veteran can log into their VA account and kind of see the same thing, but not quite to the extent. But what I always tell people is that you can go ahead and call directly too and get that same information. So to your question, long way around there, I do think there are a shortage of accredited veterans representatives, but that should not hold someone back from doing a claim. There are a lot of education resources out there. We're small here at Navy Mutual. It's Meredith and I. So we are careful not to take on too many people because I want to have the bandwidth to really be able to help everyone. Reply to every phone call, email, and all of that. But oftentimes we will do classes. So you can come to a class, understand the whole process, and then very successfully complete your claim.
That is such an excellent point that I think a lot of people forget that they can actually submit their own claim. And I think what people might get caught up in, even if they know that they can, is will they get the verbiage right? Will they get the things right in the package itself to trigger the VA to count their ailment as some kind of percentage in the total package. So, but I certainly appreciate you bringing up the point that you don't actually have to do this through a veterans representative or through anybody. You can do this all yourself.
Absolutely. And I don't know that there's necessarily magic language, right? So let's kind of peel back the layers of the onion on that a little bit. It's about having the evidence, okay? But more importantly, what I think is the most important part of this process is that exam that you have, your compensation and pension exam, your CMP exam, because that is the point that the veteran can really advocate for themselves and explain to the doctor how their condition is affecting them. So one of the biggest misconceptions about this whole process is it's not about compensating you for your pain and suffering. Okay, that is not what the VA claim is about. It is about how does a condition that you currently have, how is that condition caused by your service or aggravated by your service? Okay, and then how is it affecting you in your day-to-day life? So that's kind of the part that people will miss. They think they have to go and document 15 years ago that you had a sprained ankle. Well, do you have any residual effects? Oh, my ankle's fine. Well, then you're not claiming it, right? But if, yes, 15 years ago, you sprained your ankle and you still have some residual effects, you have never been able to run as long as you did, 15 years ago, then, the chronic nature of it really speaks to your claim. So it's not about, again, compensation for pain and suffering. But if we really dive into the law, if you're bored one night and you want to geek out into VA law, down where it's dark and cold here in the foxhole, bring your VA law book. But it's about how do these conditions you have affect your earnings capacity? That's what the law is about. Now, we all know veterans that are rated 100%. And, here where I am in DC, they're still out there making six-figure incomes, right? So it doesn't mean you can't work, but I guarantee you that those folks are dealing with things, chronic pain, mental health. They can't concentrate, they have to take breaks. So that's what the process is about. And you really need to advocate for yourself when you go to those appointments about not just having the condition, but really how that is affecting you in your day-to-day life.
This is great. Omen, this is why we asked Heather to come down the foxhole to talk about. Every time I talk to you, Heather, it's just more clarifying information about this really opaque process of getting out and dealing with the VA, or actually, to put it better, benefiting from the wonderful benefits that the VA provides. So just again, one more time, I know I've told you that before, but thank you for all the help you've given me and coming on and clarifying a lot of this. You dove into VA disability. So for those listeners that are wondering kind of what she's talking about, the service-related conditions and whatnot, we're talking about the VA disability and all the benefits that come along with that, including payment, income, and different types of healthcare and other types of benefits and statuses. But at the heart of it, you talked about the 100%. You mentioned that, and there are different types of ratings that you can receive from 0 to 100%, correct?
Correct. Absolutely.
So can you just talk about that math? Because the math is very difficult to understand for someone looking at it for the first time and how that is calculated.
Yes, absolutely. I always joke that it's harder than Common Core. We lived in Texas, and the kids had to do Common Core math, and then we moved to Virginia, and I'm like, thank God, no Common Core. But yes, excellent point. So what happens is every condition that you have, that you're submitting that you think is related to your service, the VA is going to assess you for that. And then they will send you a decision, a rating narrative that explains every single condition and how they evaluated it. So 1, it's going to say yes or no, service connected. And then 2, if it is service connected, what is your rating for that unique condition? Okay, and your rating is always going to be a 10. So it's going to be, they round. Okay, so no one's going to have an overall rating of 55%. So, and they'll give you a reason. Now, 0 is actually a rating. Okay, and sometimes people get very upset that they got 0. However, all that is saying is that we recognize that, yes, this is service connected, but at this point in time, it's not affecting you in such a way that it's compensable. Okay, but that 0 is still important because if that condition worsens, you already have the connection. So they're going to take every condition individually, but like you said, they don't just add them together. Okay, so let's say that we have a veteran that has 50% for sleep apnea and 50% for mental health. Well, you think, oh great, 50 plus 50, now I have 100%, that's the highest. So they're going to take 50% from one, we'll just say sleep apnea, subtract it from 100% because you started your service of sound body and mind, right? That's why you went through all the medical processing before you came in. They evaluated you. You were sound body and mind. So you started at 100%. Well, now we're going to take out that 50% for the sleep apnea. So you're still 50% able. That's a VA term. Okay, so now we're going to take the additional 50% for mental health, and now that still leaves you as 25% able, right? So really, your overall rating is going to be 75% VA rounds, so it's going to be 80. Okay, so they're going to take each, subtract the remaining percentage from the able body. And sometimes a veteran will get back their rating and they'll see all these, different ratings, and together it adds up to 300%. Well, you can't be 300% of a person. The most you can be is 100%. Okay, so they just kind of take the pieces away. So, there's some good webinars on that, the VA math that you can understand. But what a lot of people get confused by is they go to the rating charts, and you can find those. You have this condition, it affects you in such a way, that's 20%. So they go ahead and make assumptions about how they'll be rated for everything. And that is just a dangerous path because, again, the evaluator has to determine how it is affecting you. And sometimes we miss some pieces here. And I can give you an example. So I had a veteran who came back and was kind of frustrated because they got a very low rating for their shoulder. And they just felt like it should be more. And I said, well, let's talk about the exam, right? What happened in the exam? Well, they did the range of motion and you told me to stop when I felt pain, but I felt pain right here, but I kept going. I pressed through, I didn't want to, and I was just hanging my head down. Luckily it was a phone call, but I'm like, there's your problem, right? You were conditioned in the military to not really talk about your pain, right? You push through, but now they're asking you, how is this affecting you? And from that evaluator's perspective, it wasn't. You had full range of motion, but to you, it was agonizing pain that would be affecting you, right? So that's kind of sometimes what happens. And then you can go back, and do a supplemental claim, higher level rating. So that's another thing I point out to people. Don't stress yourself out. It is not a one and done, right? Of course, we want to do a most complete claim we can, but if something is not evaluated properly, if later on you feel something got worse, you can always go back, right? You can always go back.
My personal experience is I actually did not know the VA math when I retired. And so when I first got my letter, it added up to like 230%. I said, this makes no sense because my rating didn't match the total percentage. And I had to dig in at that point to figure out what was going on. But yeah, that was a little bit frustrating right out of the gate if you don't know the math, how that actually works out. So I appreciate you breaking that down very easily, actually, to understand. Yeah, once you just basically cutting down the amount of percentage left of you as each rating goes. So
right. And some pictures. I think it's hard. You can't share these pictures in the foxhole. It's too dark down here, right? But you guys can go back and look at the pictures a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hey gang, it's Rob here. I wanted to take a moment and tell you a little more about my buddy Omen and his financial planning firm, Formander Wealth Management. As you already know, Omen is a proud Marine Corps retiree turned financial advisor. That's right, his firm is a faith-based financial advice firm focused on the values and life goals of active duty military veterans and retirees, federal and state government employees, and of course, all their families. Formander Wealth Management is a fiduciary, fee-only, flat fee firm. That means there's no commissions, no referral fees, and no percentage of asset management charges. Just one clear price for advice that is always in your best interest. Whether you're preparing for retirement, navigating a major life change, or simply seeking clarity in your financial decisions, Formander stands ready to serve. Learn more at www.formander.com. That's www.4myndr.com.
Formander Wealth Management, LLC is a registered investment advisor in the Commonwealth of Virginia. This advertisement is for informational purposes only and does not constitute investment advice or solicitation to buy or sell securities. All investing involves risk, including the potential loss of principal. Please consult a qualified financial professional before making any investment decisions.
There's something significant about the 50% disability threshold. Can you kind of talk to that a little bit?
Absolutely. Okay, so for someone who is retiring, I always call 50% the magic number. And what I mean by that is if your rating is at least 50%, you will get concurrent receipt of your VA disability and your service retirement. So you might hear that called CRDP, concurrent receipt of disability pay. That is automatic at 50%. So that means you're going to get a check from the VA and a check from DOD, okay, or a direct deposit, okay? Now, if you're less than 50%, so let's say 40% or so, right? What happens is you get the full amount of your entitlement from the VA. However, your retirement is reduced by that amount. So you have an offset. So you're getting the full gross amount of your retirement, but part of that is coming from the VA that is not taxable, and part of it is coming from DOD. So you're not getting the full amounts of both because of that offset. Now, there are other things that could come into play. The combat-related special compensation that can restore some of that offset if some of your disabilities are specifically related to combat. But you can't get concurrent receipt, the CRDP, and the combat-related special compensation at the same time. You can either get one or the other, which is more advantageous.
So thank you for leading the conversation to those other benefits, because these are some of the lesser known VA benefits, especially associated with disability, the CRSC and the CRDP. Can you briefly explain what these are, how they're related, if they are at all, and when a service member should consider, seeking these, or how they go about doing that?
Sure. I mean, it is complicated. So I always tell people, reach out. There's always the what ifs or certain scenarios. But generally, again, you're under 50%, you won't get concurrent receipt of both. Okay. Over 50%, it's automatic concurrent receipt of disability pay, CRDP. Now, let's say you have an offset. Let's say you're at 40%. Okay, so part of your retirement is essentially waived, to get your full VA amount. But maybe one of the conditions that you're rated for is specifically related to combat. And there are regulations about, what is considered specifically related to combat. Then you can apply with your service. So this is actually a DoD program, the combat-related special compensation. You apply with your service for that particular benefit. They verify if yes, what happened to you is specifically related to combat. And then this is a tax-free amount that is paid by DoD to basically fill in that offset gap. So that's what that's about, but it has to be applied directly through each branch of service. So each branch has its own CRSC board that determines if those specific conditions will qualify as combat related.
This is where I think speaking with a professional is like, it's required. Like, you're sitting here talking to us about this, and we're having a discussion, and it's still confusing. And it's not that you're not giving us a great breakdown of how this works, but you've got to go to different services. You got to go to the VA. You've got to put it on the paper. Like, putting this all together, some of it's tax-free, some of it's not, some of it's an offset. But if you get a certain percentage rating, there's a lot that goes into this. And talking with a professional about how to map this out and help people through the if-then statements that just naturally come out of this process. Heather, having you in your back pocket, this is so good, so good.
Well, and you're right, because a lot of this has been coming from questions that I get, and I say, oh gosh, I don't know. And then I have to go and find out and read the law and get with the experts. So I've learned a lot along the way, and I appreciate you guys asking the questions, because the more people that we can educate on this, the more benefits people will receive, right? Because part of it is, if you don't know to even ask the question to reply, you might miss out on the benefits. So super important. And we will have to save time in a foxhole for another day to go down that whole rabbit hole about medical retirees, because I've talked to you before about all the differences with medical retirees. And again, that's a whole different scenario as well. But the more we can do, and I appreciate you guys for having this forum so that we can educate people on all these different benefits.
Yeah, for sure. We'll put that on the calendar. But I know I've built a flow chart that I continually modify that helps me remember where all the different arrows go if you get something ticked off the box. So we'll just keep at it and keep working through this. But this is not something service members usually do. So I wanted to shift gears just slightly into kind of the survivability of disability ratings and disability compensation. When we, as planners, look at the survivability of a pension, right? We've got the survivor benefit plan. It's literally built into somebody's pension if they're married or if they have kids and they've elected to have either their spouse or kids carry on a portion of the pension after they pass away. It's built into the system, and it's pretty easy to plan for. Not so easy with disability. Can you kind of talk us through major milestones and major rating percentages that might carry a VA disability rating beyond the service member's death?
Sure. And let's start too with the fact that ratings can change, right? So I always tell a veteran, if you feel like you have a new condition related to service or a condition you are rated for, it gets worse, you can go back to reevaluate. However, the wild card is nothing is permanent until you've had it for 20 years. Okay. Even when you get 100% P&T, permanent in total, technically it's not permanent until you've had it for 20 years, right? Which is very confusing because that's the definition of the word. So if you go back, it is possible to get a downgrade. Okay, now, I honestly rarely see this happen, but let me give you an example. Let's say that someone feels that their knee has gotten a lot worse. Their knee pain is really affecting them more. So they go back to be reevaluated for an increase for their knee. And they have an MRI, and the doctor says, well, actually, based on this MRI, your knee looks better, right? Your cartilage is stronger, your bone mass is better, whatever they look at in MRIs, right? So actually, we see an improvement. Well, right, you opened up that can of worms. Now there's the assessment, so it could be downgraded. Now, again, I don't want to scare people because I don't see that happen a whole lot, but it absolutely is possible. So that's something to consider. Also, when you get your rating, sometimes they will call a condition static, which means they don't expect any improvement. But sometimes there is certain conditions where they will tell you you will be reevaluated for this. Let me give you the example of cancer. So typically, if a veteran is going through cancer, service connected, so they're going to get 100% during that period where they're going through treatments. But hopefully that cancer goes away, right? Goes into remission. That's the goal of treatment. Well, then they're not going to stay at the 100%. Then it will be downgraded at that point, when they no longer have that condition. So you could have changes, throughout for the veteran. Also, it's really important to keep the VA up to date regarding your dependents. Because if you are rated at least 30%, you get additional compensation for having dependents. Now, this is not money that is paid directly to your dependents. It is paid to you because you are supporting people. And remember, in theory, you're being compensation because you have reduced earnings capacity. And if you have more people to support, that impacts you even more. Okay? So if you have a child, adopt a child, get married, after you've gotten that initial rating, let the VA know. At the same time, if you get divorced, if your kids age out, right, because they could only be your dependent for so long, it is very important you notify the VA or you're going to have an overpayment. And at some point in time, they will realize that. And if it's 10 years later and they come back and say you owe us $20,000, you owe them $20,000. So that is on the VA to keep, that is on the veteran to keep them up to date. So that's kind of the first part of your question. Aren't you regretting that you asked now, right? To get so involved? Okay.
Not at all.
So first part of your question. Second part is, what happens to that money when your disabled veteran passes away, right? They still have a family. Well, their disability compensation ends. It ends at midnight the night that they die, okay? So no more compensation for family unless the death is service connected. Okay, now what the heck does that mean? So let's say, for example, you are rated for high blood pressure. Okay, so you have a service-connected condition, high blood pressure. You have a heart attack. Well, that's probably related to the high blood pressure, right? So now we have that service connection. So if it's a service-connected death, then there is a flat rate benefit called Dependent Indemnity Compensation. And we like to call that DIC for short, because that's a whole lot easier to say, right? DIC. Right now for a spouse, it's $1,653. Now, to compare, if a veteran was at 100% with a spouse, their compensation was about $4,200 a month. So even if the spouse is eligible for this benefit, we're talking about $2,500 less a month. Okay. And the reality is most veterans do not die from a service-connected condition, which is good for our veterans, right? Not so much for the survivors, because there is no more benefits that will continue. Now, one thing that gets very confusing in the whole financial planning process, and I'll get this with my clients, is the whole 100%. There is a myth that if you're at 100%, then your family automatically gets that DIC benefit. And that's not correct. Okay. There is a time period that the veteran has to maintain that rating in order for their family to get that benefit regardless of the cause of death. So let's break this down a little bit. So I'll have a client who tells me, hey, put down, DIC because I know my spouse is going to have that. And I say, how do you know that? Oh, because I'm 100%. Well, how long have you actually been 100%? 2 years. Nope. Come back and talk to me in 3 years. Okay. Because let's say in 2 years, they die of a car accident. Well, that's not service connected. They haven't been 100% for 5 years, so there's no benefit. Okay. But maybe they're only rated 40%, but again, they have the high blood pressure and have a heart attack, service connection. Okay. So until we reach that 5-year point in terms of our financial planning, estate planning, we cannot say there's going to be a benefit, and it is significantly less. Okay. So I think that's really important for people to understand.
Yeah, it sounds like, so service connection is definitely key, right? There's certainly the time frames as well, but service connection is key. What would you say to people who maybe got a 100% P&T rating at some point, and there's something else, some other ailment that comes up? Should they go back to the VA and talk to them? I mean, they're already rated 100% P&T.
Great question. Okay. So let me continue a little bit that DIC conversation because it will relate. So let's say 5 years after you have retired, separated, you get to 100%, right? You've gone back, you have more issues. Well, at that point, it's a 10-year period to maintain that before DIC would come into effect. Okay. So it's a little bit different depending on whether your initial rating, from day one when you became a veteran was 100% versus getting there later. But an excellent question, yeah, I'm already 100%, but now, I have this pre-diabetes thing and they think that's related, to my time in service. So on one hand, you don't need to go back because you're getting the most compensation that you can get. There are very unique situations, like if it's related to a creative organ or something like that, you might get a little bit more. There are special monthly compensations, but that's kind of rare. So we'll save that for one of those crazy what if conversations one day. But generally, yeah, you're not going to get any more compensation. If you're 100%, you can always go to the VA for free for anything, right? However, one advantage to going back and having that service connected is if you die from it, because that way, then that your family would have that DIC benefit, the education benefit for, the service connection death and things like that. So that could be an advantage, but, there's kind of pros and cons to doing that. Also, I generally tell people to go back just because laws are always changing. And we just never know what if they change criteria for certain things. I would rather you already have that connection just in case things change in the future.
That's a wonderful breakdown. Talking about the different benefits of being different levels of disability and when you get them and how it affects your payment and the legacy payment for your family. These are just the things that are really hard to know if you're just entering, because usually people, when they retire and they get out, they know about the VA disability because their colleagues are generally talking about it. But these other really wonderful things that are lesser known, of course, they're being led by the fact that you have a service related disability. I mean, it's all meant to kind of treat that. These aren't things that obviously you want to seek. Like, I hope when, I'm going to die early, so I get the DIC to my family. I mean, these are all they're meant to make you whole, not to make you whole, but to help you with your condition. Going back to that initial claims process for the VA disability, there's a few different ways we can do it. And recently you and I spoke one-to-one on the BDD and the benefits of that, how that plays out versus maybe doing something after you get out, trying to do that claim within the first year or maybe even after that, and the differences in those windows. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. So BDD, it benefits delivery at discharge. Okay, that's what it stands for. And the idea behind that is that you can file your claim while you're still on active duty. So that in theory, you get to the front of the queue so that within 30 days of when you separate, you have a rating. Okay, now understand I said in theory, right? So it's not a guarantee. Okay, I can't tell you how many people have called me and said, when I was in my TAP class, the VA said I was guaranteed to have a rating within 30 days. No, they're doing their best. Okay, what you have to understand is how long it takes your rating to be determined just depends on so many things. One, how many other claims happen to be in the queue when you hit submit, right? Two, how many people are working for the VA at any given time, to process these claims? And then even how many providers are available to do the exams, right? So all of those variables can make one person's experience very different from another person's experience, okay? So that's the goal, that you get that compensation a little bit more quickly. And that would be great because that would really help us in terms of financial planning, right? Of knowing how much compensation we'll have from the VA in our, financial planning transition. The thing is, it's not guaranteed. Anything that you file within your first year will have an effective date of your date of separation. Okay. Even if you do a BDD claim, it's not effective until your date of separation. Okay. So let me give you an example. My husband happened to retire January 1st, which was very helpful for tax purposes, right? We only had to deal with a whole year, but he didn't do a BDD claim. And I'm a planner, I work for a veteran service organization. I'm like, dude, why don't you get in there and get this done? Well, the reality was he wasn't ready to deal with it. Okay, he was still going to appointments on terminal leave, referrals that had expired, and just retiring was enough right then, right? He didn't want to also have to deal with how service had changed him. So I had to let that go, right? He finally kind of let the dust settle. In March, he did file his claim. Okay, and I feel like he had time to think about it. It was a very complete claim. He got a rating in July, which I didn't think that was terrible. Right. And then in August, he got a check that was retroactive all the way back to January. If he had filed a BDD claim, it would have been effective January. So my point is the money is the same. In his case, it was much less stressful for him to wait, kind of take a pause, deal with one thing at a time, and get it processed. I've seen BDD claims that, yes, you get a decision within 30 days. I've seen others that have gone on 3 or 4 months. I've seen fully developed claims, which is basically your claim outside that BDD window, get processed even faster. So it's just a wild card. But in order to do a BDD claim, it has to be submitted between 180 and 90 days prior to your effective separation date. So if you're at day 80, and you finally get your records, you're not going to be able to do a BDD. But in my opinion, it's okay, right? A veteran needs to do what's right for them.
Rob and I have talked about this on a previous episode for a couple of different reasons. Number one, my own example was I received my rating 3 weeks after retirement, but also kind of a little known fact. Even if you do get a rating immediately after you're discharged, that first payment is not for 2 months after your discharge, right? The first month doesn't count, and then it's in arrears after that. So VA disability payments are something I would say are things not to be counted on in terms of your income cash flow until it is in your hand. And whether you're retiring and you're getting a pension, or you're not retiring, you're just simply getting out. This is the kind of time to build up a cash fund that's a little bit larger than your 3 to 6 month emergency fund to help in this particular transition until all of these things kind of settle. As you said, as the dust settles, this is one of those events where you might want to just have more cash. So thank you for honestly putting people at ease. I think that, yes, BDD is a great thing to do, but it's not the end all be all. So can I shift gears a little bit on you? Because I want to explore just briefly here an area I think is really confusing and that is the difference between VA healthcare and TRICARE. Which one should you prioritize over the other? Are there any gotchas? Can your family, what do you suggest when people start tackling, should I sign up for VA healthcare and or TRICARE? How do you tackle this?
Perfect. Well, I'm glad that you said, should I sign up for VA healthcare? Because right there, that's a misconception. People think, okay, I went through the VA disability process. I have my rating. Now I'm going to walk into the VA clinic and get care. No, you actually have to enroll in VA healthcare. Okay. And the VA does have 8 different priority levels for their healthcare. And where you fall is going to depend on many things, primarily your rating. If you're at least 50%, you're on priority 1. Okay. But you can always go to the VA for any service-connected condition for free. Okay. Always be seen there. You can go for anything, but depending on where you fall in that priority, you could have an income restriction or a copay. Okay. But there is healthcare available from the veteran, just these different tiers determining how much you pay and how quickly, you're getting the priority for the appointments. But VA is not for the family. If the veteran is rated 100% and they are not eligible for TRICARE, the family's not eligible for TRICARE, there is a program called CHAMP VA for the family, but that is a very narrow eligibility criteria. Okay. Generally, if a veteran has that rating, they might be medically retired, and even if they're medically retired, they're going to have access to TRICARE. So if you have access to TRICARE, you cannot use CHAMP VA. The veteran, however, can use both. And I recommend that everybody enrolls in VA healthcare because there's advantages to having both. For one, you may not live close to a VA facility, right? Depending where you go, it may be more to your advantage to use TRICARE. But with TRICARE, you're going to have some copays as a retiree. So let's go back to the sleep apnea. That's a good example these days because it applies to so many. While you're on active duty, you get all your supplies for free, right? TRICARE, your machine, all the additional supplies you need free. When you retire, you now have a copay for those supplies, okay, through TRICARE. However, if that is service connected, then you get all of your supplies and everything from the VA for free. Also, what we've found is access to mental health through the VA is much easier. TRICARE, yes, you can get, counseling through TRICARE, but again, you have a copay. And we found that there's not a lot of providers that are either accepting TRICARE for mental health or have openings. Yes, I accept TRICARE, but I can see you in 6 months. VA, that was much more accessible. Okay. So I definitely think there are reasons for the veteran to use both. You can have a PCM at both, but maybe if you're sick, who can you get in with faster, right? I've also recently learned that with urgent care, VA will cover urgent care and their copay is only $30, whereas the TRICARE copay is $38. Right? So there's definitely advantages, but if you do have a family, you will need to enroll in the TRICARE so that your family has that coverage.
Hi, all. Omen here. I know Rob and I have a lot of fun on the show, but I want to take a minute to get serious with you about Rob's financial planning firm, Everman Prosperity. Rob built his firm from the ground up around the core principle of being a fiduciary, serving the best interest of Americans and their families. No commissions, no sales, and no referral fees. Rob believes financial planning should be a transparent, ongoing process that provides peace of mind today and prosperous days tomorrow. Whether you're active duty, navigating retirement the first or the second time, need help managing your investments, or working to build a legacy, Rob meets you right where you are, but will never leave you there. Either click the link in the show notes or visit prosperwitheverman.com today to schedule your free consultation. Everman Prosperity. Pursue your prosperous life.
Everman Prosperity LLC is a registered investment advisor in the Commonwealth of Virginia. This advertisement is for informational purposes only and does not constitute investment advice or a solicitation to buy or sell securities. All investing involves risk, including the potential loss of principal. Please consult a qualified financial professional before making any investment decisions.
I want to light a fire under you a little bit. I've heard you talk about the people that charge for help, And you mentioned it a little bit at the beginning, but I want to hear a little bit more, at least get the rant out of you, like what you think. So, because to a service member, when you're getting out, you're seeking help, and everybody seems like a very benevolent actor. People like you, or maybe someone we see on Instagram or TikTok that's like, "Hey, I can help you out." Can you just break down kind of the best practices or the way maybe these actors should be kind of weighed and perceived for people getting out of the military and seeking help?
Sure. Great question. And let's maybe take it from the perspective of let's look for red flags. Okay. First red flag would be if this is your initial claim and someone is offering to help you but charge you for it. That means they're not accredited because it is illegal to charge someone for that initial claim. Now you can do it, right? I mean, if you want to go with someone who's not accredited to do that, but my biggest pet peeve is there's so many good people that will help you for free. So I'm always about, maybe it's my frugal financial counseling part, but I'm like, let's start with the free one, right? Because again, it's not a one and done. Start for free, see what happens. Now, if you get to the point where you want to do an appeal, and then you're going to hire a veterans attorney, then yes, the attorney can charge you. Okay, they've gone years of school, they have this experience, and they can charge you. But that would be a red flag. Also, someone who guarantees they can get you 100%.
Yeah.
I mean, let's just think about that, right? No one can guarantee they can give you 100% because you have to have the medical evidence. And, in my opinion, if someone is guaranteeing something like that, then they're looking to fabricate evidence, right? Because you can't guarantee anything. The other thing just to be aware of is that remember, it's about how your condition affects you. So you could have the same condition as someone else, but it affects you differently. So you're not really getting rated on necessarily a condition, but your day-to-day life, what is happening. So bottom line is start with someone who is free or educate yourself, do it yourself for free, and then see where it lands. And if you truly feel like you had an ineffective exam or the evidence was not considered or something just didn't work out right. Remember, these are people. Okay, these are people behind the VA. Now, I won't scare anyone, but VA is also starting to use AI. To kind of do sweeps in the files and things like that. So we will see how that plays out. But generally, there are still people making these decisions. And sometimes people do make mistakes. But it has been my experience that generally, if you go through the process, it does get worked out. And by and far, most of the people at the VA are good people that really want to help the veteran. They are trying, to say yes. And that's the way the VA is supposed to work. They are the advocate for the veteran. So, if all things equal, if it's as likely as not that this is related to service, they're supposed to say it's related to service. So just beware of anyone, that says, my last, 10 claims I did, I got 100%. Well, maybe you were just working with people that had a whole lot of conditions, right? Nobody really talks about that part about it.
That was a very polite rant.
Thank you. I did my best.
I was expecting more. I was definitely
hoping for more. I had the bleep button ready. I was ready to go.
It's a good thing I didn't have coffee before. I might have. Oh, I disappointed you. I was trying. Next episode.
All right. We got 2 more questions here as we kind of wrap up. And the first one I have for you is, what is the least known or used benefit in your experience that you think everybody should know about?
I would say education. Okay. And in terms of that 100% rating. So here's the thing. A lot of the benefits that we're talking about for survivors, like that DIC, the dependency indemnity compensation, veteran has to be deceased for the survivors to use that. But if the veteran is 100%, that education benefits, survivors and dependents education assistance, Chapter 35, they can use that now. And a lot of people don't even think about that. That benefit gives the spouse and eligible children, within certain ages, 36 months of a benefit. entitlement. And again, a lot of times that's not on their radar because we're assuming all these benefits for the spouse, the children have to do with survivorship. But that particular one, yes, it also applies if they die from a service-connected condition. But if they're 100% living, go ahead and use that benefit. I'll also say that one thing that is very unutilized are state benefits. Okay. Everyone thinks big VA, right? But your state offers you benefits as well. Oftentimes based on your rating, but not always. Sometimes it's just your veteran status. And they may have different residency requirements, like you have to live in the state for X number of years, but those are definitely underutilized. Virginia, if you happen to be 90%, your spouse and kids have education benefits for Virginia. You get 8 semesters of tuition free, right? And then you could use that in addition to the other benefits. So definitely don't overlook the state level benefits.
I'm so glad you pointed out those benefits. We are personal recipients of those benefits, both Chapter 35 and because of the state of Virginia that we live in, at least for now. We'll see what comes in the future as the state decides whether or not they're going to continue on with those benefits. But that's such a great area. And just because of your experience in dealing with veterans, just curious with your interactions with veterans, if what area or areas, you seen were lacking. So no, thank you for bringing that up.
Absolutely. And don't forget, you've got the VRNE program, the Veterans Rehabilitation and Employment. Don't quote me on that one. I always forget what the R stands for. But that's additional education benefits, career counseling, all kinds of benefits are available outside of the DEA, outside of the GI Bill. So there are ways for veterans to get, training, degrees, all kinds of mentorship and opportunities through that one as well.
We've gone a little long, and I think for good reason, because what a wonderful problem for veterans to have all these benefits to try to sift through. And then we're fortunate enough to have folks like you that can help us navigate that situation. So thank you for that rundown. I think we've just scratched the surface on some of these. It might need some more digging later if we could have you on again to talk about it. But we've got some business to take care of here in the Foxhole. We can't let you go away without participating in our trivia challenge. Omen and I have been facing off over the last handful of episodes with a trivia challenge. And I am proud to tell you we are currently tied at 0-0. Neither of us have answered a question correctly.
Oh, good. No pressure then, right?
Well, there is pressure. I'm going to apply the pressure because today you're playing for me. It's my turn to answer the question. But as a guest, we are going to defer that honor to you. You're going to be answering. And if you get it correct, you're scoring a point in the Foxhole here for me. So Omen will provide the question and then you're on the hook.
What if I didn't want to play for you? What if I wanted to play for Omen
That's
instead?
a good question. I don't know.
Make this easy. I'll give you the answer. All right, here we go. Which war popularized the widespread use of foxholes by infantry soldiers? Was it World War I, the Korean War, World War II, or the Vietnam War?
I'm going to say World War I. I feel like those have been around for quite a while. Did I fail you, Rob?
I'm not giving you. I'm not saying anything. I'm not looking at you anyway. I'm not giving you hand signs. It's not.
I thought you were going to ask me a movie or something. More relatable than like a history question. Okay. Well,
no
maybe I need to phone a friend. Foxhole. World War II.
All right.
Keep
that
going.
Is incorrect.
Vietnam.
World War One.
I thought you said World War One. Wasn't that my first answer?
What?
That's my first answer.
No, I'm sorry. It is World War II. I'm sorry. I was looking at the wrong.
Now wait a minute. In the spirit of honesty, she did answer World War One.
How does this count?
Yeah, she did answer World War One first.
Yeah, so she answered World War One. They've been around a while. Then she said World War II. Yeah.
So I don't know. Okay.
Tricky
How about
guys.
this?
You're gonna have to adjudicate that.
I tell you what. So in the spirit of honesty, since Heather's telling us we got to be honest when we go talk to the VA and disability, we got to be honest, right? We have to be forthright and honest. And yes. I think that's the right. I think that's the right advice, right? Let's say get the benefit you deserve, but be honest, right? So what we're gonna do, I'm gonna be honest. I'm gonna say she said World War One first. Sounded final and definitive to me. So, and also I want to retain the bit that we're still 0-0. I want to see how far that we can keep this going. So we're going to go 0-0.
Okay.
Thank you for playing.
I'm glad I could help.
I'll be honest.
Of course. My pleasure.
Think that's not the direction that you were going to go with that. I thought you were saying we're going to have to be honest, and I'm going to have to take the answer for this one. So, Rob, I appreciate you going. I need
all the good karma that I can take right now. That I can find. So, well, Heather, listen, thanks for coming down to this filthy foxhole and talking about all the wonderful benefits that the VA provides and how to navigate that and how to find the benefits and make best use of them. We do want our people to know how to connect with you. So if you could please provide the best way to get in touch and how to best use your resources.
Absolutely. Reach out anytime. I hope I can come back. The foxhole was a little roomier than I thought, maybe a little bit more lighting down here, right? But email's great, hwalrath@navymutual.org. I travel a lot, don't always answer the phone, but I'm obsessed with email, so that's always a good way. Or reach out on LinkedIn. That works as well. But anything I can do to help, more than happy to. So keep sharing the information. The more benefits we can get for people, the better.
Okay, we'll go ahead and drop her email in the show notes. So reach out to Heather. I can tell you from personal experience, she's a great resource and very generous with her wisdom. Do not hesitate. Thank you, Heather, for joining us today. Looking forward to having you again soon.
Yeah, you guys keep this up. This is awesome.
Omen, what a wonderful resource Heather is. We need to have her on again, talk about some of the other things because we scratched the surface with a lot of this information.
Yeah, we haven't talked about regular contributors, but I think she needs to be number one on the list.
No offense to the ones we've had on before. Sorry, guys. Well, with that, that's going to wrap things up for today on the Fiscal Foxhole. We really appreciate Heather Walrath coming by and giving us some great information, and we hope you took away something you can use in your life and as you transition out of the military. Thank you for hanging out with us in the trenches. If you like our show, we'd love if you give us a review, or better yet, shared it with a friend and subscribed yourself. Today we had a lot of great information, but we got to focus on some takeaways. So, Omen, what are our takeaways from today?
Our number one takeaway, market hype versus real fundamentals. Even though inflation, geopolitical tension, and central bank buying feel like real drivers for gold, this drop is a reminder that emotion-fueled rallies can turn fast. When everyone's rushing into gold out of fear, you're not investing, you're reacting. Gold's fundamentals are strong, but not immune to correction when sentiment overshoots reality. Our takeaway number 2, getting started with the VA is half the battle. Know where to begin. The best way to tap into your VA benefits is to start early and start organized. Whether you're still in uniform, just transitioning out, or already out, begin with education using va.gov, and if need be, connecting with veteran service organizations. They can help walk you through eligibility, paperwork, and timelines so you don't miss out on what you've earned. And our third key takeaway, the VA is a maze, but be sure to navigate it with someone you trust. From healthcare to disability benefits, it's easy to get lost. That confusion is exactly what VA claim sharks prey on, charging big fees or making false promises. Don't fall for it. You've earned those benefits, and with accredited experts like Heather Walrath on your side, you can get what you deserve without the scams, stress, or wasted time.
We'd love to hear from you. If you have questions you'd like answered on the show, please send us a note to fiscalfoxhole@gmail.com. If you heard something today that you'd like to discuss further, or you just want to dig deeper into your own financial game plan, both Rob and Omen are accepting new clients and always happy to chat. You'll find the links to their websites or to book appointments in the show notes. Rob Moore and Omen Quelvog are both registered investment advisor representatives. This podcast is for educational and entertainment purposes only. While they are both advisors, they are not your advisors. Therefore, nothing you hear on Fiscal Foxhole should be taken as specific investment, legal, or tax advice. For guidance tailored to your situation, please consult a qualified professional who understands your individual circumstances.
Omen, it's launch week. We are live.
I can't believe it's finally here. Like, we have been working diligently. I'd say probably you more than me, is what it feels like to get this thing out. And personally, like I've wanted to podcast almost since the beginning. Like since I retired, I wanted to podcast. I don't know if I'm any good at it, but it's fun and we get education out. So it's cool.
Yeah, I agree with you. I am working harder than you on this. No, it's a thrill. I think we talked about this early on a couple years ago, something about the idea of a podcast in addition to all the other kind of half thought out ideas that we had about our future. And it was like, oh, okay. Yeah, sure. Like it was hard to imagine. And I agree with you. It's so nice just to be able to talk about these ideas out loud rather than it just kind of rattling around in my head. It either galvanizes or challenges the ideas I kind of have about this stuff already. So it's been a really enjoyable experience. And yeah, I don't mind editing at all. It really is kind of fun and kind of creating something out of whole cloth. It's really a neat feeling.
Yeah, I'll let you keep on with it. I tried my hand at editing a while ago and I can do it. It's definitely not my favorite thing to do. So I'll let you keep going. But yeah, your thought about galvanizing or challenging what we already think. I mean, that was evident even in our having Heather on the show today. Like there are so many things about the VA that you think you know. And I had somebody come in and have a chat with me about being medically retired. And there were so many aspects to this that I was just like, oh my gosh, I had to do so much research. And I still reached out to Heather. I said, this is what I said. Did I say it all correctly? And she came back and said, no. So, yeah, I mean, the VA is challenging itself, but just the fact, I think putting this kind of educational content out there really forces you to try to say things correctly, be articulate, and yeah, it's fun.
Speaking of, since we launched and we became, findable on all these services, have you listened? Have you been listening back?
Yeah, I've listened to it, I think mainly because of the fact that how often are you findable on a podcast app? Like that,
right. Yeah.
That's kind of cool.
It's kind of neat to see. Yeah.
And I will say that when we have listened to the draft podcast episodes, I didn't really appreciate the speed at which we have to do that at real-time speed. Now that I can get it out on podcast speed and I listen to it at my usual range of 1.3 to 1.5, sounds a whole lot better. I like that.
Shut up. No, you don't.
Oh,
Do you
I
really?
love it. Yeah, I love it.
Oh my gosh. You're one of those. I'm purist.
What?
1.0.
No.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Dude, there's not enough hours in the day to listen to podcasts at 1.0.
I'm patient. I'm very zen. But I'm curious. I've listened to podcasts before 1.2, 1.25.
Yeah.
Sometimes if it's dry material that I really need to get through, maybe our podcast qualifies. But if there are two people in the podcast, one person sounds better at 1.2 or 1.25 and the other one sounds too fast. Have you found that, or are we good?
No, I think we're good. I don't even know what my podcast would sound like if I went back to real time. In fact, I'll remember so one of the podcasts I listen to is Lacey Langford's podcast, right? For
the
Melmo Show. And I listened to it at my regular 1.2, 1.3 speed. And then I speak with her at Mill MoneyCon at real time. I was like, boy, you sound so different.
Are you medicated? Well, I'll let you enjoy your crazy listening speed. It sounds like you're going to get through those re-listens before I will. But yeah, I'm going through them as well, just to make sure they're polished. You don't want to put anything out that doesn't sound good, but so far so good. We'll see how the next few go.
Yeah.
Wow, what an amazing resource. Man, that sounds stupid. Hold on. What an amazing resource.
What an amazing guest today.
Yeah. So dumb.